This is the problem, is everybody's under this like such a sexual hypnosis from like a societal conditioning.
Yeah.
And you could see it play out. Everybody's using once you mix sex and power and greed, or sex as a game of manipulation and like as a hierarchy thing, like depending on where I'm at in society, and the hierarchy I'm on would be about how much sex I get, which is what it's defaulted into now.
Yeah.
So like how much sex you get, the type of person you have sex with, how much money you have also contributes to how much sex you can have. Like all that stuff, once you start playing in that realm, you're basically fucked. Because you can't get an end to it. So you have people like have harems, you have women now that have stables of guys, you have some people trying to be traditional, but like once you don't get to the root cause of what's generating it, which is technically like seeking out of mom and dad's love on a very base level, which we could even go a step further, is really trying to seek out completion, wholeness, which really is about trying to get God's love in the end. So, but people don't see it. So on the surface, they're like porn, like all this stuff. They're hijacking their brain ultimately to be set up for like endless unfulfillment. Does it matter if you cough? Sermons on the couch. You could probably edit it out. I could say it again. Like if you cough, that's another thing, is we could just say it again. I'll just say it like it sets them up for like you hijack your brain and you're basically set up to chase after thrills sexually, and almost like there's never an end to it. So porn and all this stuff becomes like a way to just kind of keep that dopamine hit going. So you end up basically chasing after a hit. You're just another type of drug addict. And then what ends up happening is they're not happy. They're not fulfilled. Like I literally have people come to me now, and I don't even, like my clients now, they come to me like guys. So let's say the guys are like in their 40s. They come to me. I don't even go like, what's happening? I actually now go like, let me probably tell you what's happening. And I tell them, and they go like, I was like, you probably watch porn at least once to twice, a couple times a week. You probably like either you go to strip clubs or have gone to strip clubs or like to with your friends, right? You maybe go out, drink, you get fucked up, you smoke, you drink. You're like, I'm like, you're sex with your wife. You probably don't have sex with your wife more than like a couple times a month, if that. And then most of them are like, God, I haven't had sex with my wife in like a couple months. I'm talking about like healers, bro. I'm talking about people that like teach stuff to people, like I'm going to teach you how to do inner child work or all this. I'm like, bro, you're like a healer and you watch porn? Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's the antithesis of being healed. I have wounds. I don't want to look at them, but I'm going to play a good role, or I have a skill set in things I've learned to make you go like, ooh, look, of course, the Miracles calls the unhealed healer. So, look, this is what everybody does. I put up a front, like I got it all together. I can teach you. But like behind closed doors, I'm like watching porn. I'm like disconnected from my wife. This is like rampant all over. So until people like that, I think also too, I've talked about this. That is one of the most unseen issues that people like, they deal with like addiction stuff, alcohol, drugs. They deal with like their wounds from their childhood, like all this stuff. Almost nobody deals with this. And it almost seems to be that the crux of drink and do drugs, like at the very core, it starts like with the sexual stuff. Like fell in love, broken heart, harden your heart, maybe chase after women or men. Get more sex. Then you need alcohol to do it. Then you do alcohol. Then you're doing, and before you know, you're doing blow. And they're like, I got a drug addiction. I'm like, actually, you have an unhealed sex trauma. And there's so many people that don't realize this. I would almost venture to say there are people teaching at recovery centers, doing addiction stuff, that don't talk about this or deal with it. And if you don't, you're basically stunting your growth and stunting spiritual. Like, I don't give a shit. And I literally had somebody tell us, like, you can't be the fullest, best version of yourself spiritually if you're like jerking off the pictures of like, I don't know, take your pick, college chicks, this, that. I mean, you can't.
Right? They're just like in their own trauma and like dark circle that you're just kind of fueling.
Well, actually, yes, but hold on, even better, totally all that, but it's a picture of them or a video, right? Like pictures were always for me, I don't know, it depends on probably when you grew up. There's probably a lot of people that grew up in like the 2000s that it's videos because they didn't grow up, it depends on what era you grew up in. But like when I was growing up, it was pictures. We didn't have videos, or maybe like a VHS, but you looked at like Playboy magazines, you look at Penthouse or Hustler, they were pictures, they were stills. The video, it was harder to get your hands on a video then. Well, think about this. What you're doing is it's a still picture or a video. You don't know the person, so you don't see any of their trauma. If you see their traumas and got to know them, the fantasy would be over. I know this. Somebody told me a statistic. There was a porn star, like a top porn star or something. I don't know who the porn or anything, like, but somebody was sharing with me. And it might have been in like the gay community. Somebody was sharing this. I don't know. They don't tell me who it was or any of that stuff. But this porn star wrote a book on their life and their traumas. They were the #1 porn star, and nobody watched their stuff after that. The moment the person became humanized, you can't play out the fantasy. So what you're saying is like the person has their traumas, but you don't see their traumas.
Mm-hmm.
Like somebody said this to me, like porn, you don't see that young woman's got a gun to her head in between scenes probably. Whether it's literally, whether it's figuratively, whether it's drugs, whether she's trafficked.
Financially,
right? I heard a porn star who like became like a Christian or something, said people like thought my net worth, even online, $3.5 million. They literally said like my last scene, I had $1,500. Like I had to do my last scene just to get money to get the drugs. So if you saw that, you would not. You can only have a fantasy about that person if you don't see that. The moment you do see that, and I've had this experience too, like many years ago, like when I got to know, let's say if I was in a training or a large group and I was a student or let's say a staff member or something like that I was supporting, you could see it where, oh, she's hot. Once you heard about their life and their history and their trauma and like their daddy issues and all that, you're like, oh, she's like my little sister. Ugh. Right? So you actually have to dehumanize and objectify to play out the fantasies, which think about this for a moment. Just think about this on a spiritual level. I need to now make you a body and an object so I can play out fantasies, which, you ready for this? See, people don't know this shit. Ready? There's a book called Arousal that somebody had me read many years ago, which what they figured out, in the human psyche, there is a psychological component of the brain where we found a way, it's like a survival mechanism, where everybody finds a way to get pleasure off of the things that hurt them sexually. It's really, really weird or strange, however you want to call it. That means, let's say a woman's molested and raped when she's young. Typically, when she grows up, if she never worked through it, she will have fantasies of being raped. Because what happens is the psyche finds ways to protect us, to derive pleasure off the things that hurt us. So think about this now. I now have to take a picture or video of this woman who I don't know, or a man if you're a woman, or if you're gay, all of it, whatever it is. Whatever my kink is, I have to take the body, the person, and not have them be a person. Make sure they're a body, to get a fantasy off of it, to derive pleasure for the fantasy because of my unhealed wounds of my childhood that I learned to get pleasure off of. But the only way I can get pleasure is if I make this other person not a person, an object. How can you be spiritually and connected to God and do that? It's impossible. You can't. Actually, if you play it out, what you'll notice if you have enough sensitivity is you aren't connected to God. You're just seeing people as bodies, which Course in Miracles is like you either see flesh or you recognize the spirit. It's one or the other. And that was for me when I really started to go, I had to come to the realization where forget about it disconnects you from your wife. Yeah, there's a lot of people that could really care. Could be like, yeah, whatever. I've been married for 15 years. My wife's a pain in the ass. I don't really care. But when you go okay, I got to a place where fundamentally you can either keep these compulsions, which you derive no satisfaction or pleasure off of, because you can't get enough of what doesn't satisfy you. You need more and more hits. it stops working. I can either have this where I'll be chasing after for the rest of my life and I'll end up alone in my 60s, 70s, hiring hookers if I have the money, or if I don't have the money, stuck in like a lonely room, maybe living at my parents' house. You know how many people I've had come to me that still living with their parents or taking care of their parents, 50, 60 years old, can't keep a relationship, jerking off to porn, and if they have enough money, getting hookers. Like, that's the end. That's the end game. Like, how miserable does that sound? I tell guys this, or even women too, but women are of a different compulsion because they're trying to always get love. They're taught, little girls are taught to be objects of affection, and little boys are taught to objectify. That's typically, given it's 2024, maybe that's changing now in all the insanity. Now we're just teaching, that's a whole other conversation separate from this. But with these compulsions, if you come down to it, fundamentally gets in the way of your connection to God. So on one hand, I get all this, which is not pleasurable. I'm just chasing after it. There's no end to it. It's like a dog chase after its tail, or connection to God. Which would you choose? And that's what the choice ultimately comes down to. And I just was like, I'm done. And it's not easy because you have to rewire your brain. That, I would say, is a fundamental, it gets in the way of most intimate relationships. It gets in the way of connection to God and people's like divine connection. The serpent, sexual compulsions and all that, sex outside of intimacy and let's say marriage or a committed relationship, it just turns toxic. Just look around. Like, why? Because of all this. So who would choose that if they knew that that's what they were doing? But it's at the very basis of, like, I would say addiction, alcohol, compulsions, money, right? Because I make more money so I can be strong in the world, which now it's equated, you have a lot of money. The next thing that goes with that is sexual conquest and domination, and women are even doing it now. So, like, look at that. It's set up for people to be miserable and fail. And nobody wants to talk about it. It's not popular. It's not popular. It's the antithesis of what everybody's is caught into. And even the people that are talking about, like, be strong, be masterful in your life, all still, you see all these famous people still chasing after, oh, you're a top G and you're the man if you have all these multiple win, all that. And it's just a recipe for disaster. Good luck. You'll be chased. You'll never get enough of it.
I mean, yeah, when you talk about it like that, it's like sex sells, and then you see that, like, after you've fallen for it, like, whoops. Like, you're stuck in a cycle.
Whoops. And I'm talking, this is not just me. I'm talking, I have talked to people who are like, whether it's billionaires, multimillionaires, people who are like crushing it. People making 20, 30, 40, $50 million a year. I mean, that's like big numbers in the world of and they're like, I mean, they sound like somebody who works at like a blue collar worker that works at like the local restaurant. That's what
they're still not able to enjoy it.
Like you make all this money. Like, do you even enjoy it? Like they're
like it's fun in the impulse or in the
like that's what it is. They
hit. Yeah.
They think the fun is like the thrills of, but then they're just they stop getting it from the money. So it's like, how many bodies? How many women can I get? How many? And now you got women walk around like I have 365 bodies this year, one for every day.
It's embarrassing.
It's embarrassing. And the women. What's really tough, what's really frustrating is the men cannot do it. The men need a lot of money to do it. The women can just do it. They already have the power. And that even drives men even more crazy around it, which now the sexual impulse is like, how do I possess that body? Because my self-worth is like, can I possess them? Which Course in Miracles, it's all specialness. Really, what is
special relationship?
The special relationship. It's an attempt to collect bodies and put them on the altar when only God should be there. That's really what most of the world is doing. Good luck. Good luck. That would be my answer for the first sermon on the couch.
It's a good one. All right.
There you go. Man, I kind of like the sermon on the couch.